Hey, what's up guys? It's Richard here, and today I'm going to be talking about color grading. This is just going to be a quick tutorial on how to color grade in general. Let's get into Davinci and start. Whenever you have your clips on your timeline, you can go ahead and go down to your colors tab, okay? And typically you'll see this in your color tab. All your clips are going to be down here. These are going to be your tools, and you have your effects tab up here. So we're going to do everything in nodes. So these are going to be some serial nodes. There's some other nodes, but we're not going to get into that. So first, I'm going to start off with building a node tree, and it's going to be super simple. Follow along, hit tab to name your node. So I'm going to name this first one color correction. We're going to balance our clip first before we do anything. Option S, and this is going to be our primary. This is where I'm just going to do some exposure correction. Option S again. This is where we're going to do a little bit of split toning. Okay, I'm just going to put curve. So this is where we're going to change a little bit of the tonality, general tonality of the clip. And the very last one, option S, is going to be our color space transform, CST. Enter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and convert this footage, which is S-Log footage. I'm making this video for someone I know that is doing this in D-Log. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the effects, color space transform, drag this. So your effects library, go to the magnifier glass, type in color space. There you go, color space transform, drag that on to your CST, and you'll be introduced to this input color space. If you're shooting on D-Log like an Osmo, you hit D, you scroll down, you find DJI D-Gamut. I'm using Sony, so I'm going to use Sony sgamut.cine, and then if you're on DJI again, input gamut would be DJI D-Log. So just match this up to whatever camera you're using. So Sony S-Log3 is what I shot this in, and already you can see it looks like a pretty good image. Color temperature was pretty all right on this, exposure was pretty all right. You want to make sure that you're shooting your entire project with a pretty balanced color temperature and just correct settings in order to make it look balanced straight off the bat. Trying to get everything balanced afterwards is not going to render you good effects. So just make sure whenever you're shooting, get as close to correct color temperature without using a variable color temperature, automatic color temperature on your camera for best results. And right here for the output space, I'm on a Mac. Go ahead and look at it. If you have a different monitor, look up what output your monitor is. But most of the time, I'm just going to use Rec 709, which is your typical output color space for just about everything on the internet. Okay, output gamut, Rec 709 as well. But I'm on a Mac, and so Rec 709A stands for Rec 709 Apple, and that's going to compensate this for Apple monitors. This is pretty important because if you don't do this, all of your footage can look just desaturated and less contrasty whenever you export, and you'll wonder why, and you'll have to have a really long fix for that. So make sure that is correct. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and balance this in the color correction tab node. We're going to go to our primaries right here on all these tools. Just count 3. This is our primary wheels. That's what we're going to do this in. Make sure you have your waveforms on. If you don't see any information here, you could go here, hit reset view. If you can't see your waveforms very well, go ahead and increase the brightness of the waveforms with the slider. Okay, click off of that. And then I'm going to go ahead and click display qualifier focus. That's already on for me. So I'm going to go to my qualifier. And just to show you, down here are kind of our black levels, and up here is 100% white. Generally, you don't want anything to be clipping in the blacks. Generally, you don't want anything clipping in the white because you're going to be losing a lot of detail that you already shot. In the clip, we can see we have, if you hover over this, we can see generally what information we're looking at. So right here is the shadows on this side. Same thing. This is all left to right. So in order to balance this, you can see our red channel, green channel, blue channel. I'm going to move everything with offset down here. All right. And you can see the separation from a red channel, green channel, and blue channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match this. And you can see right here, you generally want your whites to be white. In order to do that, whenever red, green, and blue are the same intensity, then they will render you something that is neutral, white or gray. I can see that this red channel is a little bit higher than the green and blue. So I'm going to pull that down, and this blue channel is a little bit lower than both of those as well. So I'm going to bring that back up, and here we go. Move this around. Okay. And this is actually generally how it looked like on that day. It was a pretty overcast day. It was kind of blue that day. So this is a little bit more realistic to how I saw this in real life. And so let's turn this node on and off to see what we did. A bit of a warmer look, a bit of a cooler, more neutral look. Okay. Now I'm going to go to my primary wheels, and I'm going to increase the gain. And this is kind of analogous to increasing exposure on your camera. This is good, but don't go too crazy with this because you can clip your highlights and that'll give you a very video look. You generally want to make sure you have as much information here as possible. Okay, so I'm just going to reset this. You click this to reset your node. Click this up, and I feel pretty happy with that. Okay, now split toning. I'm going to click on this next node. Here's like a technique I like using for split toning if I'm going to be doing this really fast. If you're in your qualifier tool, I like to find where middle gray is, or generally close to where middle gray is. So I'm going to click on the skin tone, not somewhere where it's kind of highlighted, but kind of down here-ish. You can see kind of lower right here in like a more shadowy area. And that's going to create a point here on your curves. So that's good because I can, while you're moving your curves around, generally that area is not going to move. So that's pretty important in order to not mess up your skin tone. So I'm just going to make a really quick selection like that. Okay. And we're going to split tone by adding a little bit of cyan. So these are our red channel, green channel, blue channel. Y is your luminance channel. So what we're going to do is add some cyan to the shadows. So, and the opposite to the highlights, so adding red. Generally, the opposite of red is going to be cyan. The opposite of green is going to be magenta. The opposite of blue is going to be yellow. So right here, we can see that we're on our shadows. If we pull down our shadows on the red channel, we're going to get a lot more cyan. You can see that if we A/B this, we have some cyan in our shadow area, and our skin tones don't have a whole lot of cyan on it because we anchored it. I'm going to bring up some red and some warmth to the midtones and highlights. I'm going to go to my green channel, and I'm going to generally just pull this down, add a little bit of magenta to the shadow, so we have, you can customize what color mix of cyan or blue is in the shadows. And I'm just going to go to my green channel and add just a little bit of greens to that red that we put it in the highlights. There we go. Now if we turn on and off this split toning effect node, look at that. We have basically a pretty decent look. Now for curves, this is where you're going to change the relationship between your midtones, your highlights, your shadows. I kind of already like this look already, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to get a couple different looks in terms of contrast. So curves right here, you can change your contrast with the contrast slider back in your primaries. You can use your lift, gamma, gain in order to manipulate like the relationship between that, and also your shadows and your highlights. I like using these primarily the best over the best for like overall like soft moves when you're color grading. Let's say you wanted generally darker shadows. You could go ahead and move your lift down a little bit on this wheel. Scroll to the left, and I'm going to make sure I'm not crushing the blacks too hard. You know, that's a fine way to build a look. If your midtones are like just kind of like not there, you want your your midtones to feel a little bit lighter, you can lift your gamma. And gain is obviously, like I showed you a while ago, is going to give you more of an exposure feel. Some other tools I like exploring with is shadows. Shadows will generally affect your midtones less than lift. So if you crush your shadows, you can get a little bit of a harsher look like that. You can pull down your highlights if you want a little bit more of that filmic look right here. Don't go too crazy with it. It does change your midtones a little bit as well. But now you can see the difference between what we had before and what we have after now. This gives kind of a little bit more of a filmic look. Okay. You know what? I'm going to add one more node to this, Option S, and I'm going to add a little bit of color density. Here's another tool I want to show in order to get some specific looks. Maybe you have this, but your grade is looking a little bit hollow. So I'm going to name this this density. This is just regular color density. The newer Davinci Resolves have this color splice tab, and everyone's been raving about it. Basically, you can add color density with color density that is kind of like having saturation. You can see in the blue, it's like bringing the luminance values, the tonality, closer together by darkening your highlights in a specific color and adding a little bit more saturation. You can do that by moving this. You can also, I'm going to reset that, just add some more saturation. And this adds more natural saturation than a regular saturation in your primaries. Different than going to your saturation right here. Color boost is totally different. And it's very different than increasing your saturation from here. It's also very different than going to your curves tab and changing your saturation and the hue saturation. It's just a lot more of a natural way to do that. So I'm going to go back to the color splice tab, and overall you can increase the density of generally everything globally on your clip. If you're finding it's too crunched, you can bring that back with density depth, and that'll bring back a little bit of the tonality of like your highlights to come through, your highlights and shadows to come through and not be so crunched together. You could overall add more saturation. I wouldn't go too crazy with that, but let's say you wanted a really dense blue look. I'm just going to add overall density and pull up the cyan, pull up the blue a little bit, add a little bit of saturation to that. Not mess with the skin tones too much because I kind of like those how they are. And there you go. The difference between these clips is very different. So there that is. Take an artistic take with it, depending on what look you're going for. And then I'm going to show you one more tool. This may go over your head, but I'm going to add another node. And this is going to be the RGB mixer. You don't need to add this, but if you want to go the extra mile and find a completely more different look, this is one way you can get orange teal look. So you go here to your RGB mixer node and click this, the RGB mixer. You have your red output, your green output, your blue output. This is kind of like if you increase the green and the blue output, it's making the image overall more greener. If we go to the parade, if we go to the vector scope, you can see it's adding a lot more saturation in that area as well. Okay, so let's say like you wanted the blues to be more green. We could add more green into the blues with this, but the thing with the RGB mixer is the output of the green output of all these outputs should average to 1. You can see that this is 1 right here. So if I'm going to pull this up by 15, you have to compensate with the red and green channels on the green output. So I'm going to subtract, generally like I'm going to go 7 0.7 from the green, and another, let's say, 0.8 on the red to compensate. There we go. Let's look at the before and after. Definitely a difference there. I'm gonna go even harder just to accentuate this look. I'm just gonna reset this and do a crazy 0.5 difference, and I'm going to pull down the green by 0.25, so that this would be 0.75, and the red would be negative 0.25. Bam, bam. All right, and overall, now we have a completely different look. You can see that our blues are a little bit more teal. Our skin tones are looking a little bit weird though, so you can go ahead and just like balance that out a little bit more. There you go. Yeah, you can go ahead and play with the RGB mixer in order to get a lot of really cool different effects with it. But you can use the other tools behind your color space transform in order to accentuate this look. Like, let's say if you like that, but now you don't think you're getting as much saturation inside the teals, you can just go back into your density, and let's just pull this up, increase the density of that. Okay, increase the density and the saturation of your blues. Now, with the RGB mixer, you have a completely different look. Okay, so that's just a couple of tools inside Davinci Resolve and a couple of ways in order to get a couple of different looks. Let's go ahead and move this on to the rest of our timeline. I'm going to get rid of that color. I'm going to actually get rid of this RGB mixer because I don't want this on my entire timeline. Hit Command A to grab all the clips. I'm going to right click on the clip with the grade, and I'm going to hit Apply Grade. Replace all those grades. Now you can go throughout your entire clip timeline. Let's say this is underexposed. Go to your primaries, click on that primary node, go to your primary color wheels, and we're just going to increase the gain until that looks about correctly exposed. And you can, move it around about, there you go. Now that look is on here, and you are balancing the look before all of your creative choices right here. So same thing right here. You can go ahead and add a little bit more gain to that if you want. There we go. I like that. And even on this food, add a little bit more gain to your primaries, and Bob's your uncle. That looks pretty good to me. Okay. Anyways, that's a video on how to color grade in general. So thanks so much. Let me know if you have any questions, and peace.